Family Guy has always been an adult show with dark themes. Even though it started out being a little less reliant on those dark themes for creative inspiration, uncomfortable topics come up a lot, often as jokes or bits. It isn't exactly known for being delicate, and has never set out to be an arbiter of morals.
Oh! How did Murphy Brown make this look so easy? Careful, don't get anything on the seats. Oh, God, I think another one's coming! I don't see it. I think it's coming out of my mouth! There's more!
Never. But that's exactly what a dark comedy is. A lot of humour, on and off screen, private and commercialised, revolves around some degree of shock value, whether decidedly dark or not. If you say something witty or taboo, and it catches another person off guard, you can make them laugh. The very idea of the roles of shock and taboo in humour has become a more hotly debated issue in recent years. Some people argue that shock humour of the sort Family Guy uses just isn't funny anymore. Others take a different stance and focus on the content, saying that some jokes should stay taboo and that some topics are completely off bounds. And that's slightly linked to what I'm going to talk about, the notorious Family Guy domestic abuse episode. Before we dive into it, I don't actually think this episode was meant to be completely funny, so I'm not going to look at it clutching my pearls and ask me how it dares to approach this topic. A show that generally falls in the comedy genre isn't always trying to be funny every step of the way, especially when you have shows that get the luxury of a long lifespan. If you look at other season 10 episodes, they handle some serious and semi-serious issues, well, seriously. I actually appreciated the presentation of what happens if you go headfirst into psychedelics without proper planning or safety. Skits aside, I also appreciated the presentation of difficult responses to transitioning, even if it wasn't a completely serious episode by a long shot. Quagmire is nasty to Ida, and Ida reacts calmly, raising interesting discussions about gender dysphoria. As another example, take the episode where Lois and Peter burst in on Quagmire in his log cabin, about to take Meg's virginity after hearing about her 18th birthday. Sure, there are silly comedic bits throughout the episode, but the characters don't find it funny. And to an extent, I don't think that we as the audience are meant to either.
I'm not going home! I'm 18 and you can't tell me what to do anymore!
Meg, I'm only gonna say this once. You may be an adult, but you're still my daughter. And it's my job to protect you from errant wieners. So I don't care how old you are, you're gonna do what I say and get in the damn car!
Yes, Daddy.
Cue the serious music, and the issue is resolved in an essentially non-comedic way. It was taken seriously by the characters, and didn't have a goofy ending, like many other Family Guy episodes do. The episode I'll talk about most in this video, though, is Screams of Silence, the story of Brenda Cube. I think it also falls into the same sort of category. The episode begins with Peter and Joe discovering that Quagmire has suffocated at his home, having autoerotically asphyxiated himself. Joe and Peter and their families take him to a hospital, and the only family member of Quagmire's who turns up is Brenda, his sister, and her boyfriend, Jeff.
Is his family here?
His sister Brenda is coming with her boyfriend, Jeff.
Oh my God, not that guy. Is she still with him? Isn't he the one that beats her?
This scene sort of sets the tone for everyone's reactions to Brenda staying with Jeff, particularly those of Lois later on, and eventually Quagmire himself. Lois is frustrated with her, not Jeff, but Brenda, for continuing to stay with Jeff. The implication is that this is somehow her choice, and somehow her fault. In Lois's mind, as we also see in this dinner scene that we'll revisit later, Brenda is apparently making the choice. Now, as I mentioned earlier, while this episode isn't meant to be wholly serious, it's not being wholly comedic either. The frustration of the characters seems to be genuine. We're meant to sympathise with the main characters of the show, in that we're assumed to understand where they're coming from in their reactions. This is where a lot of the criticism of this episode comes from. The reactions of Quagmire and Lois are the only in-depth, drawn-out reactions we get, and they're reactions of scorn, at least in part, towards Brenda. Other criticisms of this episode come in the portrayal of the abuse itself. So let's meet Jeff.
All right, on the way back, I get to pick the radio station, because that was awful.
I know, yeah, it was. I'm sorry. Oh God, I hope Glenn's okay. I'm so worried about him.
Shut up and limp! We're in a handicap spot, you slut!
The car is shabby, Brenda has baggy eyes, and Jeff is very clearly drunk and disorderly. This is a stereotype of domestic abuse. It's clear to see, it's aggressive, and it's big man on weak woman. She's clearly a victim, he's clearly a bad guy. It's a pantomime performance. And honestly, I expect this from Family Guy. I know they're not a domestic abuse charity or any sort of moral authority, so holding them solely accountable for a crude representation would strike me as a little strange. It can definitely be argued, though, that this portrayal of an abusive relationship contributes negatively to public understanding of domestic abuse by using the massive platform Family Guy has to add one more clumsy, poor representation of a very poorly addressed and poorly understood issue. If you've never experienced domestic abuse yourself, this could well be part of what forms the basis of your understanding, even if you know better on some level. Where else are you going to engage with discussions about domestic abuse of all things? Probably nowhere. And if you have experienced abuse, this sort of public consensus on what domestic abuse looks like, created bit by depictions like these, can be part of what makes you cast doubt on yourself. Putting the label of abuse on your experiences is difficult enough, and often, even the smallest things can cast that shadow of doubt.
God, you're all right!
Hey, you touching my girl?
Relax, Jeff, that's your brother.
Yeah, that's how it starts. Come on, Brenda, we gotta get out of here. I need cigarettes and jeans.
This episode does raise some valid ideas, though, that do reflect in many survivors' experiences. For instance, Peter suggesting to Lois that they just caught the couple on an off night does reflect a reluctance to interfere that rings true in quite a few cases. People might overhear abuse and not be sure what exactly they're hearing, and not wanting to interject the false accusation, even thinking themselves dramatic for considering it. Another valid idea comes from a suggestion from Quagmire.
I've tried talking to Brenda about leaving him, but I haven't gotten anywhere. I was actually hoping you could talk to her, Lois. She might open up more to you, because you're a woman.
Me?
Yeah, would you mind at least trying?
Well, I guess she does need someone to talk to.
Domestic abuse is definitely not solely man on woman, but in the case of female survivors of male abusers in particular, some find themselves feeling uncomfortable around the opposite sex. This is why a lot of support groups are single-sex. Some family members, like Quagmire, might pick up on this. So the episode continues with Lois going to dinner with Brenda to try to talk to her about her relationship with Jeff.
You know, Brenda, I'm glad we could get together.
Me too, Lois. It's nice to have a girlfriend to chat with.
Don't you have any back home?
Oh, no. Jeff would never allow that.
You know, that's kind of what I want to talk to you about, Brenda. Do you mind taking off your sunglasses? Oh my God.
No, it's really not that bad. It only hurts when I see.
You know, you don't have to stay with a man who treats you that way.
So far, so good.
Oh, Jeff's sweet. You don't see how soft and gentle he hits me when we're alone.
Do you hear yourself? He shouldn't be hitting you at all. I don't think you understand how serious a matter that... Close your menu.
What?
Close your menu so they know we're ready to order.
I'll give you another moment.
Damn it.
I'm sorry. Oh, shoot. See, this is why Jeff corrects me all the time.
Corrects you? Brenda, he's not correcting you, he's beating you.
Well, I can see why you'd think that, because of the punches and all, but it's just that Jeff's been so angry about the immigrants.
What?
It'll be better when he gets back to work. Our relationship is just complicated, that's all.
No, Brenda, it's not complicated. Trying to get a straight answer out of a 23-year-old girl is complicated.
There's a lot here to draw the aforementioned criticism. For a start, there's Lois's anger. It's not so much for Brenda as it is at Brenda. But even this could be argued to hold some grain of truth about conversations survivors often go through. Not everyone is understanding. In fact, that's a major part of the fear behind coming out and talking about being abused. The fear of people reacting like Lois. This sort of reaction exhibits little understanding of what abuse is, and little empathy, framing the abuse survivor as somehow deficient for not acknowledging the label of abuse. But any credence this reaction might have had as any sort of portrayal of abuse is offset by Brenda. Brenda's victimhood is exaggerated to the point of completely eclipsing any sort of character. Any moral objections aside, this could have worked, had the episode not been completely centered around domestic abuse, and specifically Brenda's relationship. It's not even entertaining by Family Guy standards. All it looks like is a very clumsy, backward attempt to look at another serious issue in this season. In fact, the way Brenda is portrayed is more a caricature of how Jeff treats her than any reflection of her own character. If you were to draw up a grim stereotype to make fun of domestic abuse survivors, Brenda would be it. She is overly submissive, apologetic, and makes very illogical justifications. Staying in an abusive relationship doesn't make you as stupid as the parodied excuses the writers have Brenda pull out. The writers could easily, without losing Family Guy-style entertainment value, have had Brenda be afraid of leaving Jeff for her own safety, and let that be a focal point behind other characters' conversations with her. That would have actually made sense, and not detracted from the story. As it is, though, it's only briefly mentioned, and even then, only by Quagmire. And then we have what I think has to be the crowning jewel of this dumpster fire, the intervention. Let's watch.
All right, well, first we want to thank you all for being here for Brenda. Now, I know it's going to be a long day, but we're all here because we care about her very much.
What's going on? What's all this?
Brenda, this is an intervention. A lot of us don't like how Jeff's been treating you, so we're gonna say a few things, and then you'll say a few things, and then we'll be done. Sound good?
I guess.
All right, so we're gonna go around the room and tell you exactly how your situation has affected each of us.
Okay. A little weird, making a discussion about abuse about everyone but the abuse survivor, but it's mostly just bits for a while after this. Until it's Quagmire's turn.
Look, I know what you guys are trying to do, but Jeff and I are fine.
No, Brenda, you're not fine, okay? Please, I'd like to say something if I may. Brenda, the fact that you are being abused has affected my life in the following ways. The sister that I knew and loved growing up no longer exists. The person I see before me now is just a punching bag. And I call you person and not woman because a woman is a strong, beautiful, vibrant creature. A woman embraces life. A woman makes choices to make her life better. Sadly, the fact that you are with Jeff proves to me that you have made a choice to make your life worse. I want the girl I grew up with back. I want my sister back. Brenda, I love you.
Here we saw all the cues that the audience should be sympathizing with Quagmire. The camera angles, ambitious by Family Guy standards, the zooming, the lack of music and sound effects, and in the script, of course, the long speech, which he uses to insult Brenda for making a choice. If anything in this episode convinced me that it deserved the backlash it got, it was this scene. Brenda's victimhood has been exaggerated in one way, as her only defining characteristic, to draw attention to her relationship, while Quagmire's victimhood, on the other hand, is also exaggerated, but purely because he's a third party? Maybe it was intentional, but Joe almost predicts this.
But if I were you, I'd set up an intervention.
What's that?
It's like a surprise birthday party, but instead of cake and presents, there's angry letters and someone who inappropriately tries to make it about themselves.
Being the family member of an abuse survivor is by no means easy, but this entire episode so far, and we're actually about done with Brenda's involvement, has done nothing but trash Brenda for being abused, as if she is actively hurting her loved ones. There are so many layers of pity porn here. They even suddenly clip in the tears at the end of the speech, just so we're extra sad for, Quagmire? On a side note, I'd also just like to wonder aloud about how Seth MacFarlane didn't burst out laughing whilst voice acting Quagmire and wheeling out some, I guess, motivational feminist stuff. I mean, his whole character basis is...
What's wrong with you, Hold Her Down or 5,000? That's just for women.
well, that.
Glenn, I am so lucky to have such a wonderful, loving brother like you.
How sweet and loving. The rest of the episode is Joe, Quagmire, and Peter plotting to kill Jeff. They take him into a forest for a hunting trip and plan to take him out quickly and pass it off as an accident. All it takes to convince Joe to abandon his policeman's oath is a few seconds of a Jay Leno bit with Brenda and Jeff seen through a window, which seems legitimate. I found that bit especially weird in light of the scene earlier in The Drunken Clam, where Joe tells Quagmire that,
I mean, what happens if one of these nights he hits her so hard he kills her?
Sorry, Quagmire. Police policy, we can't step in until it's too late.
within a few minutes though.
Let's waste this dick.
Go figure. I guess this revenge plot point is meant to be satisfying. Jeff is a one-dimensional bad guy, so there's surely no qualms to have with killing him, and the audience is meant to be rooting for his death when the plans come together too. This is one way I wouldn't expect most, if any, entertainment to reflect any sorts of realities about domestic violence. Some of the best case scenarios make for the least flashy screenplays. The survivor gets out, goes through mental health struggles as coping techniques are slowly let go of, maybe gets therapy for a while, and readapts to life as their own person, maybe finding love again. It's a slow process, and little of it is glamorous except for being able to say, I survived. So I'm not disappointed in Family Guy for choosing this ending. Again, the truth is less than glamorous. In a bad, and most likely, scenario, the abuser goes back out into the world and dates other people. Sometimes they do get psychological help. Even the best case scenarios, where they simply disappear from the dating pool and better themselves, or distance themselves from romance forever, aren't exactly Hollywood inspiring. There's little drama to write about regarding an abusive relationship if all contact ends, to put it simply. So, Family Guy kills the abuser off. The original plan to shoot Jeff quickly backfires when he cottons on, and Quagmire and Jeff ultimately end up fighting a little drive away from the campsite where Peter and Joe are. Jeff overpowers Quagmire easily, and appears to have won. Only, we see the autoerotic asphyxiation make a return as a useful plot point, I guess, and Quagmire gets up whilst Jeff is digging his grave, and jumps into the car.
What the hell? I killed you!
I choke myself every day, you bastard!
And then that's the end of Jeff.
Wow. I guess he's really gone.
I kinda wanna kill somebody else now. Oh, boy!
It's a weird, awkward ending to a very poor episode. Now, I'm not personally of the belief that there are many topics, if any, none come to mind, that are particularly off-balance for comedy. There is such a thing as wrong place, wrong time for a joke, but for ongoing societal issues, comedy can be a way to unwind, as well as lightheartedly develop understanding sometimes. However, I don't think that this episode was a comedy. It hangs in an awkward twilight state of being, with a handful of the classic Family Guy bits and cutaways, Peter being himself, and then Quagmire's pity party. Domestic abuse is portrayed in a very slapdash, lazy way in this episode, fraught with pretty uninspired caricatures. But what made it so very unsuccessful is not only how seriously this weird take on abuse is portrayed, but also how drawn out it was. You would think that the focus of an episode would be coherent, even in Family Guy, and you'd think wrong, apparently. And with domestic abuse not being a natural focal point of conversation in daily life, it can be theorized that portrayals like these might be reinforcing misconceptions and misunderstandings. I would be inclined to say that this is a worst-case dramatic response to an animation, but we see exactly this theory in action, full force, with terms like sex trafficking, which evoke images and even NGO policies based on misunderstandings of what trafficking is, and why people end up in those situations, with the result being that more people get hurt. I've linked an interesting TED talk on that particular example in the description, and how media influences it. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want more commentaries on animation and general weird shit online, check out the rest of my channels. I make more videos. Stay safe and stay sane.